Thank you so much, Janelle.
You're welcome.
Great to be here. I work at the Center for Career Development, and I've been partnering with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and other folks on this pilot for the Student of Color Mentor Program. And I'm super excited to have the opportunity to chat with you all. We're going to be focusing today on primarily on talking about informational interviewing. That's going to be one of the students' assignments, is to connect with you all and conduct informational interviews. So I'm going to share with you the information that I'm sharing with them, so you have some context. We're also going to be talking about helping students with setting goals, and I believe you all received the goal tracker that our office uses. So I'll be talking about that a little bit, and then I'm going to share some resources if you want to refer students to the Center for Career Development. You know a little bit more about what we do and how you might refer students to us and such. So, so with that, I'll share my screen. Can everybody see that? So who amongst this group has either done an informational interview with a colleague or has been the subject of a student asking them or somebody asking them to be to interview you to learn more about your occupation? Anybody? No? Yeah, Stacy, can you tell me a little bit about that? You're muted. Still muted.
I muted myself.
There you go.
Okay. It was a while back, and it actually was a UConn. It was a UConn program just maybe a few years ago. Someone contacted me, and I'm on some list somewhere, I guess. But someone just was curious about social work versus counseling as a formal degree, and just had a lot of questions, and you know, they were really poignant, and the student did a really great job of kind of eliciting. She was looking to basically elicit kind of what my passion was and why, and I think that was, you know, helpful to her to gain a little bit more insight and kind of see the difference, or the way I saw the difference between the two in terms of something that's a little bit more ecological, you know, from a strikes perspective versus something that's, you know, counseling specific, just counseling versus, you know, something that's a little bit more global in terms of social work. So it was interesting, and it was nice to connect with young people.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else want to, and if you want to just like hop off your mic, unmute yourself, because I can't see everybody. So does anyone else have a story they want to share?
Sure, Nancy, I'm happy to share. I think so I've been in the D&I space for about 12 years, and I would say a lot of people have been interested in the D&I space, and especially over the last year and a half, because it's not necessarily something that's a topic or a traditional career. So there's a lot of conversations about how I've gotten into the space, what the work actually is, whether it's truly activism, whether it's advocacy, and really peeling back what someone in my role does.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. So we're going to be talking basically around the informational interview. What is an informational interview, just so we're all in the same playing field, why it's important, and what we're sharing with the students about why it's important. We're going to share with the students finding someone to interview. Right now, it's really focused on the Student of Color Mentor Program, but I'm going to share a couple other resources in case someone wants to kind of go outside of that, how they can prepare for their interview, some tips around conducting the interview, and then following up with the interviewee. So what is an informational interview? Basically, the way we define an informational interview is that it involves a conversation with a professional about their job, organization, industry, and or career path. So this can include discussions about opportunities, challenges, and advice, and any other content area that the student's interested in asking or you're interested in sharing. The interview is conducted by the student, so the student needs to be prepared with questions, and that's why practice is important. So in this space, and I'm going to give tips for you all later, but in this student of color mentor space, all these informational interviews are practice. So we're going to talk about how you can give students feedback later on. And so students are poised and ready and really professional when they go out and start doing these out of the safe space that they're in. Does anyone have any questions on the first couple slides? So we're going to share with the students the difference between a job interview and an informational interview. And to be a little bit repetitive, the informational interview is is really for the student to gather information. The student is asking the question, they're leading the interview, they're the driver, and they're really seeking advice. Whereas a job interview, as you all know, is an opportunity to interview for a specific job at a specific company. The interviewer at the company asks the questions, and someone at that person will lead the interview, or that group of people will lead the interview. And it really helps the candidate and the employer decide if they're a right fit for the job. So that's what we're sharing around the differences between an informational interview and a job interview. Why informational interviews are important. Practice. So like I shared before, it's a good opportunity for students to practice their skills with you all before they go out and do these types of interviews with others. And it's also just a great opportunity for students to practice their communication skills, right? So they might not have ever had the opportunity to be in this situation where they're talking to a professional. So it's a great opportunity for them to practice those skills so they can continue to enhance them throughout this program and throughout their time at UConn. It's an opportunity to expand, for the student to expand their network. So as you all know, networking is critically important in the career development process. It's a great chance for them to meet people and potentially to connect on LinkedIn and possibly even develop a more consistent mentoring-mentee relationship. And it's also a chance for students to receive advice. We recently did a survey to students. It was actually a career and identity survey that around career development. And the students, one of the data points that was significant is students don't know where to find open positions or jobs. They don't know how to network. They don't feel like they have a network. So they're not sure about job or employers and where they should apply. So this is an opportunity for them to expand their network and also gain some insider knowledge. So if you work as a social worker, what's that like? If you work at a specific organization in social work, what's that organization like? It's the best way for students to learn and understand as they try to formulate what their next steps are. And then, an opportunity to receive advice. Students are many of them are overwhelmed. You might remember back to when you were a student and trying to figure out what your path was. And speaking of that, does anyone have a story around, do you have any stories about where you were when you were at UConn? Were you just, were you pretty confirmed on your major and career path? Were any of you undecided? Did you change your major? Does anyone want to share about that at all?
I was clueless. I was the first time in my family to go to school in the US and completely clueless. And I did change my major and I was still confused and was very confused. And actually had a great time. I loved my experience at UConn, but I was definitely clueless.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great, that's great to share with the student, the students that you meet with, because they know they're not alone. Christina, did you want to share something? You're on mute.
Sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
I was I was doing like a campus tour and I was in the student union, and my parents and I had just gotten some lunch there. And this was before it was as glamorous as it looks now, but there was a little flyer that says, "Do you want to help people?" And it said, "If you do, come stop by the School of Family Studies." And it kind of just took off from there. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I didn't have a lot of, baseline of knowledge about college and how to pick a career path. But I knew instinctually that I did want to help people. And so I think that the little piece of, paper was really good advertising, I guess.
Great. Great. And again, those are great stories to share with students. You never know when you're going to, have that aha moment. It's a piece of paper you pick up, or, I remember when I was an undergraduate, I was a volunteer at the Career Center at Ithaca College where I went, and I was a senior. I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And my supervisor said, "Well, this is a career." And I was like, "Oh, wow, like I love doing this work." So that was my aha moment. So you never know who you're going to talk to or what you're going to see that's going to create that moment for our students. So finding someone to interview, we of course have the Student of Mentor program. We also encourage students to use LinkedIn. And some of you may or may not know that there's an alumni search tool. So you can search on alumni by company, by type of industry, by geographic location, and really narrow down and in mail, those contacts to see if someone would be interested in having an informational interview with you. And then we also have the Husky Mentor Network. And Stacy, I'm not sure if that's where somebody contacted you from. We're going to be using the Husky Mentor Network for this program as well. But you can also be a mentor in a broad way, not necessarily just through this program. And students have the opportunity to go onto the Husky Mentor Network to search for alumni who may have it'd be in a field that's similar to theirs, who has a similar background to them. So we're going to share that information with the students as well. So requesting an interview. We are working with students to help them understand that we want to make sure that these are formal requests. We don't want them to be using text languages and abbreviations. This will also help them as they start to, write cover letters in the future and, in business writing. So we're sharing with them, dear first and last name. We want them to connect with you and share a little bit about themselves and why did they choose you to interview. How is the student and what you're doing relevant? It might be a ethnic background, it might be a career, it might be a language that you speak and use in your career. So there's many different reasons why a student might be reaching out to you, and we want to make sure the student articulates that to you. We want the student to specify a time frame. I'm hoping that I can talk to you in the next couple of weeks. Help set that up with you, and then providing the best way for you to respond to them. And then of course, a formal signature. Anyone have any questions on the last couple of slides? Okay. Preparing questions for the informational interview. Again, we are emphasizing to the students that we want them to come up with questions to ask. And so we want them to think, what is the goal of the interview? Is the goal that they're interested in the career field you're in? Is the goal that they want advice about being a Black woman in a certain field, or just being a Black professional? Is their goal that they want to find out about the specific organization that you're working at? So we really want students to consider why they're doing this particular informational interview. And we also, want them to use that goal when they're coming up with their actual questions. So the interview is somewhat directed. So again, being intentional about what they want to learn. So, we're suggesting that they research, research the folks they're interviewing, research you on LinkedIn. So they know what your background is, or, what you're doing, and, and have some of that information going in. And then they might ask questions based on the research that they've done. And of course, we're suggesting that they use open-ended questions. We don't want them to ask yes or no questions. That we want them to ask questions that will allow you to extrapolate on what they're really wanting and what they're asking. So, conducting your interview. The student is in the driver's seat, and they're conducting the interview. They should be coming prepared with their resumes. We're not expecting you to look at their resumes, but it might come up that, oh, do you have a copy of your resume? I'd really like to see your background. So it's just always important that they have that. If it's a virtual, that they can bring that up quickly, or if it happens to be in person, that they do have a copy of that. Even though the student's running the interview, we also want to prep them that you might ask them questions, and they should be ready to answer questions about their background and what their goals are, and in this process. We want them to be enthusiastic and actively engaged. So if that's meeting in person, that's great. If that's meeting virtually, that means, keeping, it's a one-on-one conversation, encouraging them to put their camera on if at all possible. We know that sometimes they can't, but to really be prepared to, to ask those questions and to respond if you ask them questions. We're, kind of giving them a heads up about awkward silences or silences that can seem awkward, and not to worry about those. If the person they're interviewing is thinking about a response, they don't have to fill in, that gap as you're thinking. If they have to refer to their list to see what their next question is, that's okay. So try to coach them around what might be happening during the interview. And then to ask for contact information. If you're in person, it could be a business card. If it's virtual, it could be, I just want to make sure I have the most appropriate contact information for you, and to make sure that it's the best email to reach you at. And then following up, we are encouraging students to send an email thanking you within about 48 hours. Again, written formally, including some specifics of the conversation that they might recall. We also are encouraging them to reflect upon the interview. What went well, what did they learn, what might be able to do differently. And I'm going to be talking to you about how you can facilitate that as well. And also encouraging the students to share professional updates, relevant articles, and to develop that rapport and keep that communication open with the folks that they're interviewing. Any questions on any of those last slides? Okay, so some tips for you all as mentors. Help the students if there is an uncomfortable silence that lasts too long, by either asking a question or just saying this is okay, because you're in this practice space with them. Providing feedback after the interview. And Janelle made a really good point yesterday, asking the student first, how do you think this went? And let them start thinking about it and processing it and sharing their thoughts with you, and then providing them with feedback. Because it's really important that students kind of, learn from reflection and really think about how things went, but also to hear from you if there's any other tips that they might have missed in their own self-reflection. Also, you could share some questions that maybe you are expecting somebody to ask and that wasn't asked. So, that would be a tip as well. So, we are sharing with the students that in a real information, like in a real life informational interview, they're not going to be given feedback and they're not going to be asked to reflect on their interview, but that in this safe space and in this program, that is what we're asking the mentors to do. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I would add that when you're setting up the appointment with the student to find out, some people, they can take the feedback right after the interview, but some of them might need processing time to even reflect away from, and then maybe meet with you at a later time just to sort of talk through. And many students, you will be the first person that they've ever had an informational interview with. So we really want it to be a cold experience where it's almost as close to reality as possible, so that they get that experience and they know what to pay attention to in their own bodies and, you know, what's happening in the room. So that in the real case, it'd be like, oh, I remember we talked about this. I'm feeling incredibly tense right now. That's okay. I can take a breath and then continue. So things like that.
Great, thanks for adding that, Janelle. So now we're going to talk about the goal tracker and creating SMART goals for our students. The goal tracker is a document that we've created within the Center for Career Development that really helps students think about, you know, their career throughout UConn and their career development specifically. So you might be meeting with a sophomore, you might be meeting with a junior, you might be meeting with a senior. So they're all going to be at different places. But this goal tracker will help guide them and help them start thinking about what they want to achieve short term, as well as possibly a little bit longer term as well. So I know you all got the goal tracker. I'm just going to go over some of the sections of that, and then if there's questions, you know, you can certainly ask. Have just a shake of your head. Have you heard of SMART goals? I would imagine that most of you have. So I'm just going to review this pretty quickly. A SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So, you know, so although the goal can be fairly broad, we also don't want it to be too broad. So what specific thing over the next maybe, you know, 6 to 12 months is a student trying to achieve? Maybe they want to find an internship. Maybe they want to identify a career path. Maybe they want to do 5 more informational interviews. So it could be a lot of different things. And is it measurable? You know, are they able to measure and see if they've achieved that outcome? You know, is it something that is achievable? You know, if they say they want to do 15 informational interviews in 2 weeks, that's probably not all that achievable for most students. And is it relevant to where they are at this time and in this space? So again, are they, you know, in a certain major, thinking about a certain career goal, but you know, maybe then their goal is kind of outside of that. So helping them kind of see the relevancy. And what's the timeline? You know, we don't want the students to be creating goals that are going to take 3 years to achieve. You know, we want them to create goals that are achievable, you know, within probably the academic year, so they can feel like they've had some success. So the difference in how we define goals, objectives, and action steps. Goals refer to what you ultimately want to accomplish. They're fairly broad compared to objectives and action steps. But, you know, as we talked about before, we want them to be somewhat specific so they are achievable. Objectives are similar to goals, except we sometimes refer to them as sub-goals. So, you know, an objective is a sub-goal within their primary goal. So for achieving or finding an internship, that might be the goal. And then a sub-goal might be to update their resume and talk to 3 people in the field they're interested in interning. And then action steps are even more specific. So if one of their sub goals is to get their resume critiqued, maybe they review it first and then they schedule an appointment with the Center for Career Development to have it reviewed. So those would be maybe 2 action steps. So I know that you've probably set goals in different ways in your organizations or personally. So if there's resources you have that are more comfortable with you or more familiar, you don't have to use this resource. We just wanted to share it with you as you help students set those goals. And then how to set reasonable deadlines. Obviously, deadlines are important for accountability. As students write action steps, we want them to think about how long is this going to take. So again, to expect that you're going to be able to reach out and do 15 informational interviews in 2 weeks, you might want to change that deadline because it might not be that reasonable. And we also encourage students to kind of backtrack from the date that they want to accomplish the goal to set reasonable deadlines for the sub-goals and for the action plans. And this is a picture of the goal tracker that you have, that you were sent yesterday or today. Do you have any questions about goal setting? Okay, it might be an activity that some of you do with some of your students and not with others. I don't believe, and Janelle can confirm, or Patrick, that it's necessarily a required part of the mentor-mentee relationship, but it's something that is typically helpful. Okay. So curious if any of you, whether you graduated 2 years ago or in the 90s, used the Center for Career Development as a student. And I can't see, so if you did use it and you want to jump or unmute yourself, that would be awesome.
This is Deandra. I used it for resume critiques. Probably junior and senior year, I think.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I did as well. I know that they always had like one of those like folders with like the resume, like everything. So it was really useful.
Great. Okay, well, we thought it was important for you all to know what we do through the Center for Career Development, how you can refer students to our office. I'll leave my name in the chat at the end, but there's a lot of resources that students don't know are available to them. And as alumni, who, range from, early 90s to a couple of years ago, you may or may not remember some of these resources that are available to students. So we wanted to kind of give you an overview so you can, if a student's asking about like finding an internship and you think, you can give them some advice, but you think that maybe meeting with somebody in our office would be a good next step, you'll know that referral process. But before we go into that, I just want to share kind of what our services are. So we do offer one-on-one career coaching for students, and we with all different subjects. So if a student is not sure about their major, maybe they are in ACEs or they are thinking about changing their major, we, as well as ACEs, can help them with major choice. Exploring career options. So students who might have a major and they're really happy with that major, but they don't know what they want to do with it. So again, they can come and sit down with one of us and we can help them kind of process that and find a direction. Resume critiques, as Deandra had mentioned, we do have a resume critique program. We encourage students to come multiple times to get their resumes critiqued. It's not a one and done process. Typically, after one critique, there's recommendations, and then even after that, they might make some changes and then forget others. So sometimes, they come in 3, 4, 5 times to really perfect their resume. And we also encourage students, if they're applying to different jobs or different fields, to tailor their resume to the specific organization or to the specific job. So one of the mentors yesterday said that, that she came in for multiple resume critiques because she was applying for different jobs. Cover letter reviews. We also have a practice interview program that's fairly robust, where students are asked several questions that they will probably be asked in an interview, and they have an extensive review process. So that's something that students do also find helpful. We also help with the internship and co-op search. You know, if a student's looking for an internship or a co-op or a full-time job, you know, sometimes that can feel overwhelming because there's lots of resources out there, and we can help direct them to, you know, with a goal tracker to, you know, for them to make goals around finding these opportunities, and also resources. Graduate school prep, a lot of people don't know that we do help students if they're thinking about graduate school. We can help them kind of organize their search. We help with personal statements, in graduate school interviews. So there's a lot we can do to support that process as well. And then LinkedIn consultations. We really are going to encourage the students in this program to create LinkedIn accounts. The 3 students who were on the call yesterday, they all said they have accounts, but they're at the very beginning of creating those. So you know, this is an opportunity for them to network and to connect with you all. We really want to help them enhance their LinkedIn profiles. And then we also have several programs and events that happen throughout the year. We have networking events, career fairs, professional portraits, and on-campus interviews. Things are still a little bit different this year. We actually just got a date for our career fair. It's going to be smaller than it has been in the past. We're also going to supplement it with a virtual career fair. Professional portraits, we're not really sure, you know, as we come on campus with COVID, if that's going to happen right away. But these are typically things we offer, and we will continue to offer probably starting in the spring if it's not happening in the fall. So I would like to share our website with you. So this is really a great resource for students. You know, so if you're working with a student and it happens to be after hours, or the student isn't yet ready to come to the Center for Career Development, we have a really robust website. And this is where a student would go right here. It's schedule an appointment. So if a student is ready to schedule an appointment, they would click on here, and it's going to go they schedule it through Handshake. And Handshake is the university's platform for job searching. So many companies, hundreds a month, or even thousands a month, depending on the time of year, employers post positions on Handshake. And sometimes students think, well, there's nothing for me because I'm an HDFS major and I want to, you know, help people. And but, you know, there are opportunities pretty much in every field. So, you know, it's definitely a good place for students to kind of start looking at and getting information from. We have a resource, Who We Serve, and we have this link right here called Start Here, because this is a lot of information for you too. So we tried to skinny it down a little bit. And all those topics I just talked about, if a student is, you know, writing a resume and they're not yet ready to get it critiqued, we have a resume and cover letter guide that students can use, which really takes them step by step on how to write a resume or how to write a cover letter. We also have a sampler. So there's samples of probably close to 100 different resumes, different majors, different employment types. So it's these are both really wonderful resources for students who are writing resumes. But regardless of what the student's looking to do, if they're preparing for an interview, you can take them to our website and share these resources with them. And then we also have career communities, and career communities are communities that are specific to a cluster of industries. So this is the arts, media, and communication industry. or career community. And so there's some information, they can follow the community. So they would get updates when new blogs are posted, or, and these are our featured articles. We also have featured jobs. So all of these jobs are in Handshake. So if they look at these jobs, they might see something they like, but then they can click on see all jobs and internships, and that takes them right into Handshake for additional jobs. We also have events that we try to feature. So if there's events related to their industry or to this specific career community, they'll be posted here. And we also have mentors from the Husky Mentor Network who we highlight, who are doing work in this specific career community. We have some additional information like job market insights, outcomes for the university, student organizations, professional organizations, and additional guides. So again, just if you have a student who's in a specific industry cluster, you can refer them here. And then lastly, we have affinity communities. So if you are working with a student who is first gen, let's say, they can follow the community to get most recent updated articles and events. But it has information about student success stories. So students who are first gen and some of the things that they've done that have, either in college or as alumni. There's also resources. Resources specific to students who are first gen, campus resources and student organizations and professional organizations. So that's the last thing I'm going to share with you. Obviously, it's a very robust and comprehensive website. So that's why we try to break it down a little bit. So students and those who are helping students have a little bit more information to be shared. Does anyone have any questions about the website or any of the resources or services through the Center for Career Development?
Thank you for sharing. I think it was very informational. I mean, there's like a lot of things I didn't know. And I mean, I was a student, so it's really nice to just see it all together. So thank you.
You're welcome. And putting yourself back in your student's seat, the students probably don't know about these resources either. Any other comments or questions? Well, it was great chatting with you all, and Lori.
I do have one question, and I'm sorry I came in a little late, so I don't know if any of these questions were answered, but how many students are in the program at this point and how many mentees? So is there a mentee for each mentor, you know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yep, that's a perfect transition segue back to Janelle.
Let me confirm the numbers because people are still registering right now. Give me a sec. Okay, I'm back. I would say about 45 to 50 mentors and mentees. However, some of the mentors, some of the people that signed up as mentors are not available to do one-on-one. Some of them are only available to do like panels and informational interviews. So the goal is to have the students speak to as many people as possible in the field and, part of the program to sort of expand their skills. And then after having conversations with you, meeting you at the mixer, etc., then the two of you can decide if it's a good match. Because we also want them to know that, in a first conversation with someone, it sounds like, oh my gosh, this person is amazing. I want them to be my mentor. And then by the third conversation, you're like, eh. And then what? And so that's more of a reflection of real life. And so we want them to be able to not just be paired, because you know what we've heard from other mentorship programs where it's gone awry. They paired folks, it sounded good, and then it didn't work out. So we wanted to be as realistic as possible while also helping them to then have the conversations, right? With you having the conversations with them, and then them having to bold the conversations with you about, well, maybe, right? So that's why we want them to really connect with 2 or 3 people and then decide on perhaps one person to be like their primary mentor that we'll hold accountable in the program, but they could be, you know, talking to people at different levels. And because we do have alums that are, you know, recent grads and then those who are more experienced in the field, I think it really gives them the opportunity to connect with. So tell me more about like the professional journey and how did you get there, and more of what happened after you graduated, because I'm coming up in graduation and I don't have a job. I didn't do enough because we were going through COVID, right? So I think the different levels of anxiety will reflect having the, you know, different age ranges of the students, of the alums. But what I've been hearing from the students is that some of them really want to focus on, how do I get that amazing job? And some of them are just like, how do I survive this department where there's not enough people like me? I'm almost to the end, but it is rough. And do I even want to continue in this field, right? So I think like yesterday, and even some of what you've talked about, where so many of you change your majors and then even change your careers, I would really like to normalize that, because I think there's sometimes the pressure from family and from themselves or what they're seeing their peers are doing. Because some people enter college freshman year and they know they want to be this thing, and they graduate and they continue and they're that thing, and everybody else compares themselves. So I would really love for them to be able to talk to folks at different levels and experiences to really normalize. You can still be successful and find your way, and all of those experiences will help you to the next level. And then you could end up like Manisha, who's like, let me try to explain to you how you end up in the DE&I world. That is my journey too. So any other kinds of questions, concerns?
I have a question.
Yes, Stacy.
Just to confirm, the mixer is face to face?
Everything's virtual.
Oh, it is virtual. Okay.
Everything is virtual.
Okay. Just checking, you know.
We are still in a pandemic. I know. I know folks are like, let's force the be in person. But granted that you're going to be meeting people that you've never met, I think we will do virtual.
I wasn't sure when she mentioned something about like when you meet, and I was thinking, I don't know. I'm a social being, so I always.
Yeah, okay. I think in the fall, because we're returning in person, so I think when you're paired up, you can decide, right, if you want to meet with your mentee in person, all of that. But I would leave that to the paired relationship to, you know, figure out what works for the individuals, as opposed to saying you have to meet in person. That doesn't seem reasonable in a pandemic. And if Manisha goes back out of the country, then it's not even unless she wants to pay for her mentee to come all the way to the UK. But yeah, so for me, I'm all about going virtual for now. And then when you have that pair, you can decide together like what makes sense. And some students will work better. In the summer of last year, when after the George Floyd, I got a bunch of Black alums to provide emotional support for some of our Black students that didn't have support in their communities. And that was all it was. Very informal. Some of them met in person. Some followed them around, did like shadow work. So they took it to all different kinds of levels in terms of support, you know, and some ended, one summer was done, and some, they're still going strong. So I would really say for the 6 months until December, and then, you know, the relationship build, you continue, and then the two of you or all of the students you connect with, figure out how you want to maintain that relationship afterwards. we're more interested in helping them build capacity to be able to do this. And then to sustain the relationships, not just, you're my mentor, you helped me in this moment, and then you never hear from them again. So Lauren's wrapping up with the mentees, and we have some other people who joined. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for Anita, Ashley, Felicia, Namanji to introduce yourselves and tell us what program you're coming from, what you're currently doing, and go from there.
I can go ahead and start. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anita. I'm the Business Services Manager at Allied Health Sciences, and I actually graduated through the Allied Health Sciences program. So happy to be part of this. I won't be a primary mentor, but I will be working on the department side, helping coordinate everything.
Thanks, Anita. Felicia, do you want to go? Since I see your face now.
Hi, I was not even gonna lie, I was multitasking at the end of the day. But
We all
hi
are.
everybody, Felicia Goodwine. I graduated UConn in 2003 with the School of Family Studies, and I am currently the Director of Peer Services with Beacon Health Options.
Thanks. Ashley, Namanji, Jackie. Jackie, you just joined. You came just as I was saying those who came on a little bit later are introducing themselves.
Okay, thanks.
So they're just saying, you know, your name, which program you graduated from, year, and what are you currently doing?
And so I'm up?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I also was a student of the School of Family Studies, graduated back in 1983. I was thinking about that earlier today. And then went on to LPN school, became a nurse, and furthered my nursing studies at SUNY and became a registered nurse. And fast forward, I am currently in a Master's of Informatics, Medical Informatics program. So I am a practicing nurse. I work for Cigna, and I work with a team of nurses. We develop coverage policies, and I really don't know what I will do with that informatics degree yet.
Yet. Ashley and Namanji.
Hi, I can go next. I do apologize. I am driving and trying to multitask as well. But hi, everyone. My name's Ashley. I graduated in 2019 from Human Development and Family Studies, and I also got a concentration in early childhood development. I originally came to UConn not wanting to even be in Human Development and Family Studies. I actually started off in ACEs as pre-kinesiology, then I switched from there to wanting to become pre-med. Then from there, I also thought I wanted to do P&D, and then I finally found HDFS and fell in love with it, and it's kind of been my life story ever since. Currently, right now, I am working in Massachusetts at a healthcare nonprofit called Behavioral Health Network as an early intervention developmental specialist. And I also am working in their applied behavior analysis department as well as a registered behavior technician. So I am focusing primarily on working with kids ages 0 to 3, but I'm also going to start working with families and children from 3 to 21. And I'm super excited about this mentorship program because I think it's definitely needed. And I know HGFS really helped me a lot through just kind of navigating my life and navigating my college career. So I definitely want to be able to kind of give back to those students who were once in my shoes. And like you had mentioned before, you know, definitely normalizing the fact that you can still be successful even if it's not with the major that you wanted to start with, because I definitely went through that kind of identity crisis, like, I don't know what I'm going to do now because I keep switching my major. And I think human development and family studies really allows you to kind of become your own person, and it's so versatile in what you can do. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can go next. I'm sorry, I'm also driving. So trying to multitask as well. My name's Namanje. I graduated in 2020, so yay for COVID year. I graduated College of Ag. My major was public health and health promotion. I currently am in grad school. I'm getting my master's in healthcare administration and my master's in public health. And I'm also taking my prereqs to go to nursing school. So that's the end goal. But I currently work as a medical assistant at Planned Parenthood. And I'm really excited about this program. Miss Reynolds was one of my mentors when I was in school. So I'm really excited to kind of see everything kind of come full circle.
Sounds good. All right, so Nancy, Lawrence probably will be coming over so you can head over to the mentees. Thanks.
Thanks,
so
thanks
much.
everybody. It was great to meet you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thanks, Nancy.
So yesterday, Lauren left to come here and all the students signed out because they just, so we were like, please do not leave. It's just the speaker that is leaving. All right, so while Lauren tries to sign on, let me see if anyone else. I know someone just emailed, so we might have one more person joining us. But of course, it's recorded, so if anyone missed or came in a little bit late, you could always review. We'll share the videos later on. Tomorrow, we'll share the login information for the welcome event and the mixer. We'll record those too, so if you miss, it is fine. We're going to be as flexible as possible given where we are in the world, right? Any questions, any other thoughts? Any of you have been mentors before, formally in programs? Okay. Anyone kind of nervous? Like, okay, good.
Of course, my thought was, what if nobody picks me, right? Back to grammar school, and you don't get picked for the kickball team. Do they even play that anymore? So yeah, that was my thought.
No, I don't think. The plan is to, because the thing is we have so many HDFS folks that have come through, and I am like, my people have answered the call, whereas some other programs, because they're, some are younger, like digital media and design. So they've only, what, 5 to 6 years or so. So we're hoping that, so like Manisha, for example, based on, I looked you up, I was like, this looks great. If you could help some of the folks, because we're like, which is why we sort of want the students to talk to folks across the majors, because some of you, the things that you're sharing is beyond an HDFS degree, right? That can help the students that are in some of these other fields. But so we've expanded the ask to broader fields to be like, what are you doing now? Can you help our other students? Because some of these programs don't have a lot of non-white folks to start with. And then to be able to find folks of color. So we've decided to open it out to professionals who are not alums, but are open to giving back. But I'm hoping that after this pilot period, when we figured out, we've gotten all of your feedback on how to improve it, and we've gotten the students' feedback, we'll do a better job of recruiting. And I should also make mention that the university didn't actually share demographic information with alumni relations before. So they had no way of knowing someone's race. This will be the first year the university will be sharing that. So that's why the ask went out to everyone. as opposed to like folks of color. What's happening with Lauren? Let me check and see if she's having login issues. Have you heard anything from her, Patrick?
I have not,
That's
nor have I
actually-
heard from Omar.
Sorry, that was actually just a random question I had as well. Even when I got the initial email, is while I might identify as a woman of color, I'm not underrepresented in corporate. At the leadership level, sure, but for my being Asian, I'm not. And I was curious as to how we were defining it in the UConn sense. If they're talking about Black, Hispanic, two or more races, does it matter? Does it not? But I raised my hand anyways, because I love this work, but I was just really curious as to the thought process around that as well, if you wouldn't mind sharing high level.
Yeah, we went with non-white because we also wanted the international students to be included, because I was an international student for 14 years and couldn't participate in so many things. And since the majority of the international students are Asian, it would be weird to do, in my mind, a students of color mentorship program based in a department, and then when in the pilot stage, you know, I really believe that as we get more people involved, then there could be subgroups, right, that sort of talk about their struggles and experiences, because everybody has a story to tell. So that was the rationale, because I think, and all Asians, you know, it's such a broad spectrum.
Right.
That
It's like
some
Hispanic,
groups, yeah, right. Some groups are well represented and some are not. So rather than deal with we're already dealing with white folks saying we're doing reverse discrimination by trying to recruit you all. So I felt like it was better to non-white. So if you're mixed, multiracial, that's fine too, because you would have faced something to be able to help. Oh, Ashley, I can see your face now. So you're no longer driving. Okay, Lauren, you made it. I kept everyone occupied until you got here.
I had to take a restroom break. So.
Oh, that makes sense. All right. Well,
and yes, I imagine you will maybe need a restroom break at some point too. So you're welcome to do that. Not that you need my permission, but bear with me while I pull up my screen.
All right, I'll head over to the Menti stuff for now. I'll be back soon.
Thanks, Jenna. Okay. Just getting situated. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to pull up the chat box. All right. Patrick, am I good to get started?
Yes, ma'am, whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Donais, she, her, hers. And I am currently the Title IX Program and Training Specialist in the Office of Institutional Equity. I design and deliver a lot of the training and education related to the university's policy against discrimination, harassment, and related interpersonal violence. I've been in this role for about 2 years. Previously, I was doing quite a bit of student development work. I spent about 6 years in the university's Women's Center, where I coordinated the Violence Against Women Prevention Program. So I worked with students who were in peer facilitation roles, and they led workshops for their peers that were designed to inspire critical thinking around the relationship between normative gender expectations, patterns of communication, and the influence of social power or lack thereof. So I did that for about 6 years. And prior to that, I was in a similar role at Trinity College in Hartford for about 5 years. So all of my work has required me to develop a fairly strong analysis of power that's really informed by a commitment to working towards social equity. So I'm really honored to be with you all this evening to talk about navigating the power dynamics that are really inherent in mentoring relationships. I'm also, I did my undergrad at UConn too. I was an HTFS major. Any HTFS folks on the call today? I can't, of course, I see, okay, I see one hand. I can't see all of you. Oh, a couple. Thank you. I'm gonna, and then I really appreciate anyone who uses the reactions. That's always helpful. It's good to see most of your faces as well. All right, so I wanted to get started with, want to attempt to keep this as interactive and engaging as is possible in this very weird virtual environment that we're still in. So I wanted to start with a poll. You can access the poll. You don't have to download an app or register. You should be able to access this poll either by text message if you have text messaging capabilities. The number you would text is 37607. The text message would be UConn Title IX, Roman numerals, all caps, all one word. Or you can access the poll via web browser. So the URL that you see at the top could get you there if you're on your computer and it's easier to do everything there. So the full prompt here is, when you think about power, in 1 or 2 words, what comes to mind? And feel free to, you can enter, you should be able to enter more than once too. Control, white, absolutely. Influence, strength. Dominant, that one just came up with the students as well. The mentees, wealthy. Invisible. Interesting. I saw visible and invisible come in at the same time. And certainly it can be both. Authority, hierarchy, that one came up yesterday. Unchecked, yeah. Mindset. Liberating. Yeah, I think yesterday, one of the, in the mentor session, the word freedom came through. Dynamic. Right. The thing with this money, looks like a lot of you probably entered that one. The word cloud sometimes it makes it difficult to see all that are coming through assets. Oh, so this is a pretty comprehensive word cloud here. And feel free to keep them coming. I think what I'm seeing, generational, yep. Education. Trauma. How many of you all, or how many people in general have been traumatized by abuses of power? Great. So I think, you know, as I look at this word cloud, and I certainly welcome any of you who may wish to come off your mute to share your reflections as you look at the word cloud. I see a lot of I see some word associations here that are constructive. And I see many that are more sort of leaning destructive, right? And certainly some may be seen as more neutral. And while power may not be inherently corrosive, I think this mentoring program, as I understand it, and as I think the handbook does a great job articulating, was really born at least partially out of a desire to offset the individual level effects of institutionalized oppression that so greatly impact our students of color at UConn. And certainly this institutionalized oppression, you know, really depends on the inequitable distribution of power. So while our focus of today is really on relational power dynamics, I wanted to sort of root us in this because the power or lack of power that you all as individuals wield is very much connected to systemic and structural power. So most of us clearly understand formal power as you think about it within your organizations. Those of you who may be managers or supervisors, you have power over your subordinate employees, in that you have at least some control over their professional success. Those of you who have, I imagine most of you have a manager or a supervisor, so you know they have a fair amount of power over you. When you were in school, some of you may still be in school. You know, as a student, your professors had power over you in that they were controlling your grades. And as mentors, you all have power over your mentees. So you're in some ways controlling their access to opportunities, to their professional development, to your networks and your resources. Your mentees will likely select you because you represent something to which they aspire. And they're likely gonna wanna learn from you. They're likely gonna seek your feedback and encouragement. And so, as I'm sure you all have thought long and hard about, being a mentor comes with a great deal of responsibility. It's an opportunity to grow and develop another person, and speak into their life in meaningful and powerful ways. In terms of informal power, and particularly informal abuses of power, because I saw certainly a theme of that in our word cloud. Again, some quick examples of these sometimes more insidious or less tangible manifestations of power. So those of you who have ever been a new employee somewhere, you likely felt that longer term employees may have been assigned or perceived to have more power than somebody who's new, just simply due to seniority. A high performing employee that may be regarded as a superstar in their department by leadership may be assigned or perceived to have more power, even as compared to their counterparts, just due to that reputation. Unfortunately, when implicit bias is unchecked or prejudice is at play, individuals who are members of a dominant social group may be assigned more informal power than individuals who are members of historically marginalized groups. And so we saw that here with one of the first words being white, right? So white folks being our members of a dominant social group. So while all mentors and mentees hold minoritized, racialized identities, there may be some informal power dynamics that take shape, for example, in cross-gender pairings, among other social identities like sexual orientation, national origin, age, etc. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm just seeing in the chat box that someone added consistency. I'm assuming that was from our word cloud. Thank you, Ashley. All right. So I wanted to share this quote from Tarana Burke, who I'm sure most, if not all of you know, is the creator of the Me Too movement. As you were thinking about power, it's hard not to think about how many abuses of power have been brought to light as a result of the resurgence of the Me Too movement in 2017. And recently I was reading a piece where Tarana is quoted in, and she's talking about how the movement has in many ways really been misrepresented. And they quote her saying, "We have to re-educate ourselves and our children to understand that power and privilege doesn't always have to destroy and take. It can be used to serve and build." And I see you all as stepping into this mentorship role as folks who have worked very hard to earn your formal power, your power within your organization, as really setting out to serve your mentees, and you're building them up, you're preparing them for success in their future workplaces. So the university is very grateful to have you all taking on this really important role. Okay, so I wanted to spend the majority of our time together this evening applying your analysis of power to a couple case scenarios as you think through your roles as mentors and what that role really entails. So in a moment, I will pull up a scenario, a case scenario. I will read it out loud. I'll then drop in the chat box some discussion questions that you'll all have a couple minutes to sit with and think about, and then we will open up a discussion around the questions. And we'll do that for 2 scenarios and round out our time together with some resources. So our first scenario is Eric is Nia's primary mentor, and they have cultivated a mutually enriching relationship. They meet online weekly and exchange emails as needed. Nia's one frustration with Eric is that he often makes last-minute changes to the day and time of their meetings due to childcare responsibilities. Nia thrives on a regimented routine, but tries to be patient with Eric, knowing that he must watch his son when his partner cannot. During Eric and Nia's mid-year check-in, Nia expressed her preference to keep their online meetings at the set time they had previously agreed to. Eric agreed to lock in the day and time for their weekly check-in, even though that is when he watches his son, Willie. Because of that, Willie routinely sits with Eric on the video calls and always wants to talk to Nia. The two develop a bond, and at Christmas, Nia surprises Eric by sending Willie a Christmas present. So, I'm gonna drop in the chat box the 4 discussion questions here. I'll also read them out loud for those of you who may not have access to the chat. So the first question here is, are there boundary issues present in this scenario? If so, what are they and who are they impacting? Next, could the boundary issue have been avoided? If so, how? If not, why not? How should Eric handle receiving Nia's present for Willie? And would a present from Willie to Nia be more or less appropriate? So I'll give you all a couple minutes, and when you're ready, I invite you to come off your mute. If you'd prefer to enter your responses in the chat, you're also welcome to do that. But I would love to hear as many voices as possible.
So I'll start.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
That's okay. Yeah. So yes, I perceive some boundary issues happening in terms of the mentor now has introduced his child into the relationship, which is just, although it's unavoidable, it seems in the scenario, it's still wrong. The relationship is strictly to be a mentor-mentee relationship. You expand it to other people, then it starts to feel like a little family situation, as evidenced by the fact that now the mentee feels she knows the child well enough to send a Christmas present. So I'll just jump to the present, which, as we read in the handbook, should not happen. We should not be exchanging presents. So yeah, inappropriate, and it would have been inappropriate for the mentor as well. I understand that these relationships can flourish like that, and you might want to take a mentee into your home and have dinner and etc. And really, you grow to like and maybe even love them. But it's very important, especially up front, to make yourself very aware of those boundaries, so that you can be the best mentor possible. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate your insights there. And I'm happy to hear you reference the handbook. You beat me to it. I was gonna have you all refer to it if you have not already. But yes, on page, I think 9 of the electronic copy of the handbook, it outlines expectations around boundaries, gift giving, and potentially receiving, as well as amorous relationships, so inappropriate romantic relationships. So Jacqueline, I heard one of the things you said was, perhaps this was Willie, Eric's son, joining these calls was unavoidable. Do others agree with that? What are other thoughts around any of these questions?
I think it should have been a conversation between the two, Lauren, hi, I'm Manisha. If it's a one-off or if it's going to be consistent, I do think that there should have been a very honest conversation about it, because in some cases it might be unavoidable. I'm curious as to why Eric didn't maybe choose another time, and there might be a good reason as to why, but I do think that conversation should have happened.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I think ideally Eric should have avoided agreeing to a time where he knew he'd be watching Willie by himself. And then if something changed, as soon as he realized he'd have this routine conflict due to childcare, that he should have formally addressed it with Nia to see if they could identify another time that worked for both of them. And I think, Manisha, I think I heard you say something too about that this sort of context dependent in terms of maybe frequency and length. I've been sharing with people, and I'm sure you all can relate, those of you who have been working from home in this very strange time. I have met virtually any colleague I have with children. I have met their children at some point, right? But it's one thing for Willie to make an occasional appearance or say a quick hello. It's quite another if long periods of time are being dedicated to Willie and Nia talking back and forth. And again, that's certainly for mentors to decide if that's appropriate at all, right? Some of you may feel like I'm not sure I'd want my mentee to interact with my child at all, but some of you may. Other thoughts, comments? Oh, I appreciate those of you who are raised. I'm sorry, I can't. I love that you're raising your real hand and then you're using the reaction. I can't see your name. I apologize, but Stacy, thank you, Stacy. Go. Hi.
I think it's just a great opportunity kind of for discussion and kind of tie it into career choices. Different workplaces have different cultures around kids, and things like that. I mean, I was one of the first people that would bring I work in a mental health center, and I had a young toddler, and I would, run in to pick something up or to drop something off or to do whatever. And he would be like barreling down the hallway. And, in general, clients were fine with it, but staff was uncomfortable with, say, a young person in a setting with psychiatric patients. Yet at the same time, I'm in an agency that, we're supposed to, treat people with respect and dignity and, the whole person, which many of our clients are parents and things like that. So I could remember kind of saying, well, I'm not uncomfortable. I don't think at that moment someone's going to snatch and take my kid away. I was with my child. But it really just speaks to kind of having a dialogue about those type of things, as well as, time management and utilizing your resources. Is there a neighbor? Is there, a little 15-year-old around the corner that for that hour could watch for the price of a soda? Who knows? There's just about, utilizing your resources and trying to tap into them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, thank you for sharing that anecdote with us. And I think this would be perhaps an opportunity when Eric began to find himself having this conflict. It would have been good for him to check in with Nia about, like, is this okay for you, to have him on, on occasion on these calls? Are you comfortable with that? Again, Nia might not necessarily be comfortable asserting that she's not, right? So think it's so important to consider that power dynamic. But I like what you said about that this is perhaps an opportunity to have a conversation around work-life balance within your industry, because Nia is seeing is certainly the demands of having a family and needing to balance family, work, and then also this this mentorship role. But certainly I know something that came up yesterday was the possibility that Eric may need to reevaluate if this is something he can fully commit to. If Willie, it does need to be in every meeting with him for the entirety of the meeting. Would anyone else like to share anything here? Janelle, I don't know if you wanted to ask your good follow-up question that you asked yesterday. I don't know if she can hear me. Yesterday, Janelle asked the group if anything would have been different if we weren't talking about a gift, a Christmas gift, if what we were sort of the exchange was coffee at Starbucks or dinner or lunch. Would that change anything for folks?
Oh, there's layers of intimacy. If I could just jump in, I mean.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh,
you're most into, your child. So that's a very personal. And so that's a little bit different than a gift is a different thing to some people than a cup of coffee, because cup of coffee, that's think of water cooler. If you were around the office, it would be, oh, do you want me to get you a cup of coffee? I'm going down to get one. And most people don't think anything of that.
Mm-hmm.
They're very rigid, but some people are very rigid.
Right. Yes, and I think it could potentially be a bit of a slippery slope. So, again, as the handbook states, that the expectations around money and gifts or anything of a monetary value are, even if it does see it's as small as a cup of coffee, it is inappropriate to give or receive. And what we were encouraging people yesterday, the mentors yesterday, to potentially consider doing early on in your meetings with your mentor or mentee rather, is really going through some parts of the handbook together, right? So and again, we're working through the same scenarios with them. So they're gonna understand the rules, so to speak, around this, but it certainly doesn't hurt to go back through some of these expectations with them together, so there are no surprises. Great. All right. Anyone else have anything else here? Okay. We will move. Janelle, I don't know if you're with us and you wanted to add anything here?
Patrick messaged me and I was like, oh, wait, was she talking? So I missed the conversation, but I'll tune in a little bit for later.
Okay, so we'll move to the second scenario. Kiara is Han's primary mentor. Kiara struggles to connect with Han, who often averts his eyes and responds to her questions with one-word answers. After a while, Kiara begins approaching their video calls with an immediate dive into goal setting, but would always end their time together with the same message. I'm here to support you, Han. I remember the many challenges of college life, both in and outside the classroom, like it was yesterday. Please know you're not alone. Over the next few meetings, Kiara noticed Han withdrawing incrementally. While Han was initially enthusiastic about setting SMART goals, Kiara perceives a lack of motivation in his follow-through. After a couple months of this pattern, Kiara started canceling meetings, thinking Han may not be interested. After a couple months of very few meetings, Kiara expresses her concerns directly to Han. At this point, Han opens up about personal pressures that are interfering with his sleep and productivity. He adds that his mental health became especially compromised after one of his professors started making Asian American COVID jokes at his expense. So, again, I'm going to drop in the chat the discussion questions. You'll notice some of them are the same. There are some that are different. These are, what do you make of this scenario? What does this scenario bring up for you, if anything? Are there boundary issues present in this scenario? What are the power dynamics in this scenario? How should Kiara handle Han's disclosure? And if you were Kiara, would you have done anything differently?
See, Ashley has her hand up if you want to jump in, Ashley.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Thanks, Patrick. Go ahead.
That's okay. So I think in this scenario, I'm still kind of debating if there might be any boundaries that are being like crossed, but I think with the information that was disclosed to her, I think it would be appropriate to maybe have the conversation of, do you feel like you would want to talk to someone about how you've been feeling, since he mentioned his mental health, and definitely talking to him about, how he's feeling in that classroom, that the teacher was making those jokes, and trying to support him from that angle, still keeping it in a professional, manner of maybe just allowing him to know, like, you are safe to talk to me, but also, making sure I'm finding you the right resources to connect you with if I feel like, I myself wouldn't be able to help you to the best of my ability, that someone else may be able to as well.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. I think there was, I see someone, for some reason, Zoom doesn't let me see your names until you start talking. So.
Hi, Lauren, it's Felicia.
And now I can't see your, Felicia. Hi, Felicia.
Hi.
And I saw someone else after Felicia goes. There was someone else who had their hand up. So
it's Lori Foote.
Lori, thank you, Lori. Okay, so we'll start with Felicia and then go to Lori.
Okay, I'm probably gonna go out of order with my responses.
Oh, and that's okay.
I think the first one took a look at, let me scroll up. What do I make of this scenario? I really think Han's feelings of, so many things happening at one time is very common. And two, as we continue to live through a pandemic, these are things that are still going to happen. There may be young folks that didn't even realize that they may have had these issues before. And now, as different things are happening, they may be feeling different things. Let me see. I think that question of what would I do differently? I personally would not have withdrawn my communication with Han. I would have still kept in contact, still, did my check-in, and allowed him the opportunity to have that space to speak and or be silent. But knowing, it was very good that she reassured that, he's not alone, that she is there. But what does that also mean? She's saying those words, but I think you have to have those actions as well. Like, what does it mean for me to be there for somebody else? And then when he did disclose how he was feeling, oftentimes we kind of feel like, oh, what are we supposed to do with that information? Because these are young adults. And you can't go run and call a parent and be like, I feel your child may be going through X, Y, and Z. These are young adults. So how do we help them through this? So I would have, asked Han, is there an opportunity where I can share some resources that I may have with you? Because he may not have wanted anything, and you don't want to just throw things on them to say, oh, this can fix you, this can help, when it may not. But just having the conversation around, I do have some information. Please let me know if I can share it with you, or please let me know how I can be of help. So I think asking those curious and clarifying questions to kind of help them through. And I think that's all I had right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's I appreciate that approach to really assessing what is it that Han needs right now, and allowing him to some power around or some control over if he does maybe want to, if he's interested in referrals to, say, the counseling center, or is he interested in learning more about his reporting options, right? Excellent. Thank you, Felicia. Lori.
Yeah, so I agree with what everyone else has said, but I also feel like, one of the things that I would probably do is ask him if he knows of resources, or if he has any resources or people to talk to himself. So not just things that I could give him, but also things that he may already know about that maybe he can get involved with, or that he has, at hand, so that he can get whatever, support that he needs. And I think, the only thing that I would have done differently is notice that he's, basically withdrawing, and probably I would have directly asked, what's going on, just, I noticed, behaviorally, not, making assumptions or anything, but just I've noticed that, at the beginning you were really excited, and it seemed, you were responding to things, and, I've noticed that you haven't been responding as much, is there something going on? That sort of line of questioning, just instead of just sort of dropping him like, oh, he's not responding to me, so I'm not gonna have this conversation anymore. So that's basically it.
Thank you, Lori. And yeah, I think that's a great place to start, is, inquiring about what his Han support network looks like. Has he been leaning on anyone in his life? Or, you may discover perhaps you are the first and only person that knows that he's struggling in this way. So I think it was Ashley earlier who talked about you may not, even though you all were once UConn students, perhaps it's been a while, and UConn is a big place, and somewhat decentralized in terms of responding to a scenario like this. in terms of support and resources. So we certainly don't expect that you all are going to know exactly where to direct Han to, related to all of his needs. So Kiara, if you were in Kiara's position, we want to encourage you to contact Janelle, who I know has been in and out of your sessions this evening. And she can really support you in determining how best to proceed with making referrals to Han, both in terms of support. So perhaps mental health services is something he might want to explore, as well as what I said before around reporting. So Han talks about this discrimination, this discriminatory harassment that he's experiencing in his classroom by his professor. So if he wished to make a report to the university, he could do that through that. My office is, among other functions, my office is the office that investigates reports of discrimination and discriminatory harassment based on, in this case, race, or any other protected class. He may also, depending on how he wants to engage, Janelle can talk to him about the bias incident reporting channel available to him as well, or help you sort of have that conversation with Han directly. Other thoughts on this scenario or comments? Questions?
Christine, I see your hand because I know Lauren is not seeing it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not seeing everybody's hand. Go for it, Christine.
So I just wanted to mention that, I think in this position, we have to be a model for, these students. And so being able to address the concerns earlier on, I think would have been helpful for Kiara and kind of fostering that relationship, as well as kind of validating him for coming to you and expressing, that he's struggling and that, we're working to break down the mental health stigma. Mental health is health and it's healthcare. And I think the students really need to know that. And for me, I think it's important to communicate that for them. So I think it's in this scenario, it's a wonderful, I guess, show for Han that he really was present and Kiara was someone that he trusted.
Yeah.
She definitely did something right, but I think there's really a lot of room for us to model a healthy relationship.
Excellent. Thank you for adding that, Christine. And I appreciate you. I think we've been focused on what Kiara could have done differently, but I do think Han eventually sharing with her really is a testament to the care and compassion she had previously extended to him. He clearly trusts her enough to eventually share this. I think it's also, you spoke to stigma, right? In that it would be, it could be powerful to acknowledge, really affirm Han after he shared, and sort of acknowledge this mental health stigma. I think it's also worth thinking through some of the perhaps cultural barriers to help seeking. So Han potentially, right, that this is sort of conjecture, but Han may be feeling the pressure of the model minority stereotype, right? As an Asian American, he may be feeling like he's assumed to be, really hardworking and self-reliant and perhaps not in need of outside assistance. So being mindful of those factors is certainly valuable as well. Other thoughts?
I think we could also talk about the fact that many students fear retaliation if they're in the class. So a lot of the students that I deal with are like, but what happens if the professor finds out? How will my grades be affected? So that's usually where we walk them through. Well, perhaps you wait until the semester is over, right? And again, normalizing that. For some students, it's more about just getting the support, but they don't want any reports to be made because they're thinking, well, it doesn't really say here if Hannah is an international student, but I know many international students are not trying to get their names attached to any kind of reports and going through that process because, there's so many consequences that they're considering, which is why, during the pandemic when everything was happening and we knew anecdotally that so many of our Asian students were experiencing anti-Asian hate. But when we look at the reporting, there was zero.
Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of times, even the suggesting that here are all of the steps that could potentially be taken to help you, but it's okay if you don't. Let's take care of you. And in Han's case, there's also the Asian American Cultural Center. So there's the opportunity to connect him to other Asian folks who are more than likely having similar situations that could perhaps talk more to the cultural experiences and provide that level of support that he may or may not be interested in the mental health component. And then if we're honest, CMHS or Shaw hasn't really gotten to the place yet where there's enough representation in folks of, clinicians of color. So that's a barrier. So we would then have to think about how do we find those resources outside of the university, right? So there's all of those things. But I think being able to have the conversations where you have multiple options and you're not pressured, right? Whichever works for you, but knowing that this is available to you, I think is very helpful for some students. They just want to know that someone acknowledges that, they didn't make this up or it wasn't gaslighting or something.
Thank you for adding
And
that.
also don't feel pressured as mentors to be, even if you currently are a clinician, to be your mentee's clinician, right?
Yeah. And that's it. That's a great segue to just this final slide with some resources for all of you. So I'm going to drop in the chat box the electronic copy of this resource from the screen grab on the left here. So this was developed by Student Health and Wellness, Mental Health Services. It was developed for staff and faculty to recognize students in distress, but it includes some really helpful tips that anyone working with college students could benefit from. I'm sure those of you who are clinicians, already have these down pat, the tips, the pointers, and everything from being proactive to active listening. You all know Janelle now and know that she's going to be a really great resource to you if you're ever stuck with anything. And then while, as Janelle just spoke to, reporting is not necessarily going to be something that all students are interested in. For your own awareness, the university recently developed this system-wide reporting hub due to there's so many different offices across the university system that manage bias, harassment, really other types of misconduct. So if you go to inform.uconn.edu, I'm dropping that in the chat as well. Might not be a bad idea to bookmark that because if you go to that webpage, you'll be able to access a list of all the university reporting options in one central place related to all the things we've talked about today. And it also, perhaps more importantly, there's a full list of support resources for students that can be found on that webpage too, and which includes some great resources like the Asian American Cultural Center, all of our cultural centers that can provide culturally responsive support and advocacy to your mentees. So that is all I have. Any questions, comments, concerns? I'm sorry if somebody's raising their hand and I can't see it. I don't think I'm not seeing anything. All right. Well, thank you all for your time and engagement here and your service to our wonderful students. We're all lucky to have you, and I wish you all the best in your mentorship role. And I will just finally drop my email in the chat box if for any reason you would like to contact me after with any questions or concerns you may think of after the fact or would prefer to discuss privately. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and